Okay, just a quick video about how to get a PlayStation 3 controller working with RetroPie. Now there's been a previous video and there are various ones on YouTube showing you how to do this, but what we're going to do is have a quick overview with the latest version of RetroPie, or the version at the moment, which is RetroPie 3 Beta 4. And it differs a little bit in the way that it saves saves the configuration for your PS3 controller, and specifically this is going to be for a wired controller. When you've got the USB cable running to the Pi and you've got it all wired up, and I'll do another video for the wireless side, which will be a little bit different. But as you may or may not know, Emulation Station tweaks the configuration setup slightly now. So when you come to this screen, it boots up in Emulation Station, detects your gamepad. The way it logs it, it will also set the controller settings for RetroArch, which is the front end for a lot of emulators in the RetroPie package. So to start with, you can see on the screen it's detected my USB controller, or my PS3 controller. All I've got plugged into the PS3 is a keyboard and this controller, and whilst it's probably not that relevant, the model I've got is it's one that ends in 1E, which I think is a UK sort of wireless one. It's the PS3 wireless controller, but obviously I've got it wired. The full code there is CECHZC1E, but I think all of the PS3 controllers will report themselves in the same way for the purpose of RetroArch, so it shouldn't matter too much. It's really quick and easy to set this up. It's similar to the general Beta 4 overview I showed when you configure a controller, but it might be useful to some people to see how the PS3 specifically works, and also we'll make a small tweak to one of the files to get the analogue always working, and you can see how that works. So when you're on this screen with a PS3 controller wired, when it says hold down a button to configure it, it wants, or at least from what I've seen, it wants the PlayStation button itself to be held down, so that circular one in the centre of the controller with the PS logo. If I hold that down, you'll see at the bottom of the screen it'll pop up the name that it's reporting as PS3 wireless controller, I think. Yeah, Sony PlayStation 3 controller, and you get to the configuration screen. So then it's simply a case of following the D-pad, which is the sort of four buttons in the left hand side there. If I go up, down, left, right, then I've got my start and select. Now the ABXY, obviously the PlayStation controller doesn't have ABXY, but you've got your four buttons on the right, so you choose how you want to map that. You can do whatever order you like. You've got four buttons, and ABXY obviously mapped to those four. So I tend to just use the USB controller that the SNES has got set up, and effectively that works out like the circle is the A, and the X is the B, and then the triangle is the X. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, it's a bit because a lot of the buttons are the same, but you get the idea. You can set this how you want. So I'm just going to set the four buttons. I'll have that as A, that as B, that one is X, and that one is Y. Okay. Now the left bottom and left top, etc. options are the shoulder buttons. With the USB controller I have, usually it's only got one shoulder button, which equates to the left bottom and right bottom. But with the PS3, you've got them both. So for left bottom, obviously I'm pressing the one below on the left hand side, and then the right, and then the top one on the left and the top one on the right, or the higher one, however you want to look at it. Then when it says left thumb, that means press down on the left analog controller, and same for right thumb, just press down, so click it. Then we've got just the directions. You have to be a bit careful here because it's obviously, because it's analog, it's easy to make a mistake there. But if I go press up on the left analog, down, left and right, and then the right hand side analog, we've got up, down, left and right. And you can see on the screen that I can tell that I've done that okay, because I can see I've got actually 3 and minus and 3 plus for the up down, so it's detected that, right? And then I've got left 2 minus 2 plus, so you can kind of tell when you're doing that if it's selected that correctly. Then you've got the OK, and you press whatever button you mapped to the A earlier, and I mapped the circle. So I'm going to tap the circle and then wait, I don't know, 5 seconds or so whilst it does all the background configuration. It doesn't take very long. And it'll write those files out. There we go, it's written the Emulation Station configuration file and the RetroArch file. And now I can quite happily use my controller in Emulation Station as well as RetroArch, and we can see that by me going into the Mega Drive one press, I'm pressing circle because that's the A button, and select that. You see at the bottom of the screen in yellow, it should pop up. There we go, the Sony PlayStation, it's detected it. So if you see that, you know the RetroArch side is configured correctly as well. I'll press start to get into this. And you can see the left right's working fine, up down's working fine. No problem at all. But I don't know, maybe you want to play this with the analog controller. Now I'm moving the analog controllers now and I'm not going anywhere. So it's not using that within RetroArch, it's just using the D-pad. But it's a fairly easy change to make those work, and you can do that using the hotkeys, because when we just set that up, it also set up some hotkeys, and we can get to those by holding down select and tap X, or whatever you've mapped X to be. Mine happens to be the triangle, so hold down select, tap triangle, get the menu up, press A, or on circle, and I'm going to go to settings, then input settings. Then I'm going to go to here, device type and analog to digital type. Now if I put analog to digital type, change that to left analog, and then I'm also going to go on this one above where it says device type. I'm going to scroll right one, so instead of RetroPad, it says RetroPad with analog. Now it does seem to work fine just saying RetroPad and keep left analog, but it looks more appropriate to keep with analog, because there might be some other area in RetroArch that looks specifically for that and takes advantage of it. But so I'd keep it with analog, because obviously the PlayStation controller has the analog stick. And this bit's important. Do you want left analog or right analog to control you? So I'm going to put left, and I'm going to get out of that with the B button that you set in RetroArch, or in my case it's the X on the PlayStation controller. Press X a few times. You can just tap it a few times because you can't back out of this by pressing X. So I'm back there, and I'm going to select resume content. Don't select, well, you can if you want, you can select save new config and it will save this config out, but RetroPie, the package, won't reread this configuration. There's not much point saving that configuration because you need to manually edit it. I've been thinking about it, could it save it correctly so you would always read it and save these settings, but it's not really practical. So I'll show you how to save this change. It's quick and easy, takes about 2 minutes. But anyway, go to resume content, press X, or in my case the circle. Right, I'm back in the game. I'm using the D-pad still because the D-pad works fine, it doesn't stop working. Oh, that's not good. Okay. But if I go to the analog on the left, you can see now, you'll have to take my word for it, I'm pressing it. It's quite happy to, yeah, and the up and down works fine on that as well. And I could use that in the game instead. So that's an easy way just to get the PlayStation controller up and running. So it takes 2 seconds to configure an emulation station, and it's quite happy. And hotkeys are pre-configured as well. So if I press hold down select, tap start, it takes me back to emulation station. And what I'm going to do now, we're going to have a look at the command prompt. We can see the files that it's changed, and I'll also show you how to save in that that option to get your analog pad working if you want to do that. Okay, here we are at a terminal prompt, and what we're going to do is see what we did earlier with configuring the wired PlayStation 3 controller to work with RetroPie, quite what that did. Now this dropped me into the home directory, which is HomePie. If we change directory into the hidden directory of Emulation Station, we can see in here that we've got an update in this file here, ES input. So we're just going to read that one, just so you can see what it's done. So I type nano space ES underscore input.cfg, and you can see here this is the section that deals with I guess porting the controls into RetroArch configuration, so that's got to stay put. Then you can see here this one is what I configured earlier. It's one of my standard USB iBuffalo pads, so if I plug that in, Emulation Station would see it and happily use it straight away. And then down here it's added another one, because this is one I've just done, the PlayStation 3 controller, and it's got all its settings. Now these settings are just for Emulation Station, so there's not all of the buttons we press, but it doesn't need the rest in Emulation Station. and that's where it's written it, so you can see the details there. These IDs map to the same button codes that RetroArch will use, but it's just not got as many. So you can see the details there. Okay, so let's quit out of that with Control X, and if we go to the controller section, or the RetroArch controller section, with cd /apt/RetroPie/configs, and then the all directory like that. Now again, this is beta 4, so this is the first version where the configuration files for RetroArch have just changed slightly. So they're now in here. We've got a RetroArch-joypads directory, which is where we're going to go to. And we can see here, if I type ls space -lah, actually I could probably get away with just typing L there. The H is just to make the size more readable. And my keyboard's decided to pause for a minute. Okay, my keyboard decided to have a bit of a fit there. So we're back in that RetroArch configs directory. Now I've changed directory into RetroArch-joypads. And here we can see, actually, here we can see the two files that are in there. We've got the previous one that I've configured, the iBuffalo, but then the one I've just configured, which is a Sony PlayStation 3 controller. And we can have a look at that with Nano and Sony PlayStation. I'm sure you know by now, but if you just type the first letter or the first few letters of the file name and then press tab, it'll autocomplete, otherwise you'll be there forever typing some of these. Hit enter, and this is the file that it produced. You can see all the button codes there, and it's got the hotkeys. You can see that it's got an enable hotkey section, which is 0, which is the select button. It'll always use the select button purpose there for the hotkey enable. Got the various other buttons, and this one is a sort of fully populated, if you like, RetroArch setup, because these are all the buttons that it can detect. You don't need to change this, it's just really for your information, so you know that's where it is. That's the settings that it's going to use, and these are the hotkeys. You could always manually edit this and put different hotkeys in. You could take some of these hotkeys out, for example. What have we got? We've got reset button here, so 14, which is the B button, which I map to, I think, the square. So if I held down square on the PlayStation, it would reset. But if I took this line out, it wouldn't use the reset, and I could put something else in there, like maybe select the next shader in the list, which is usually M or N on the keyboard. So yeah, you can change some of these, but by and large, I would leave it exactly as it is, because the key exit hotkeys are set. So you've got the exit emulator, and another useful one is what we saw earlier, which is the menu system, which is this one, menu toggle, set to 12, which is the X button, also known as the triangle when I mapped it, but you might map yours slightly differently. Okay, so that's the file there. Now what we're going to do is, you saw when I enabled the analog buttons earlier. Now if we go to the Mega Drive, because obviously we're in the Mega Drive emulator, cd apt retropie /configs/Mega Drive. Now in this directory we can see we've got the retroarch.cfg. You don't need to ever edit or change this file here, so it's this one that you want, retroarch.cfg. I'll open that by typing nano retroarch.cfg, and this is the default one. It's got next to nothing in there, and we just need to copy 2 lines in there. And let me check. Oh, that's not what I want. Ignore that. Don't do that. Okay, there's our lines. Sorry about that. Okay. Right, these are the 2 lines that you want to type in. You can copy and paste with the right mouse button. We've got the input lib retro device P1. That equates to choosing RetroPad with analog. So that's kind of telling it every time that a Mega Drive emulator or a RetroArch based Mega Drive emulator fires up, it's going to put this line in, and this line here says which of the 2 analog pads you're going to use, the left or the right. One's left, and I'm presuming 2's right, although I haven't checked. But yeah, put those lines in, and you won't have to keep going into the menu to enable that. It's just done. That's it. Hit Control X, it prompts at the bottom, do you want to save that? Press yes, enter, and that's done. You configured that to be analog, so next time whenever you play with that PlayStation controller, RetroArch will see that as a analog enabled one, and you'll be able to use those. So hopefully that's helped a few of you easily configure a PlayStation 3 controller. What I'll do in the next video is most likely do the wireless section, which will work slightly differently. I'll have to find my Bluetooth dongle and set that up, but it should be pretty straightforward still. So any questions, please put it in the comments. If the video has been helpful, please do hit the thumbs up. Really appreciate that. And thanks very much for all the nice comments that you've put on against the other videos. It's really good to know that it's helping people out there. Anyway, I'm sure I'll speak to you soon. Thanks.